And we're live.
Hello. How are you? How are you, April? I haven't actually been able to chat with you in a very long time. So this is so fun.
It's been a while. You're right. It has been a long time. And it's been a very long time since I've been on the show. So I'm super happy to be back. Thank you so much for inviting me back. Very happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. Last time we chatted, you were part of a all women's kind of healing circle group that we did virtually. Prior to that, we chatted. Tim and I got to chat with you here and talk about your creative endeavors. But since then, I want you to tell us about what you've been doing, because you've just finished an amazing program and you're doing even more. So we want you to tell us all about that.
Well, I think it was about a year ago when we met last time, and I was in seminary, and I've since graduated from seminary. I'm now an official, ordained interfaith minister. So it's Reverend April now. Yay! And I see that you've already added that to my name.
I saw it. So I thought, we'll distinguish it now. You've got the REV in front of your name. So.
Fabulous. Yes. Thank you so much. And it's a huge step in all that I'm trying to do in the world, right? And so that happened this summer, and then my big goal after ordination was to self-publish my books. And actually, I have the two of you to thank for that, because the last time we spoke, you gave me some great advice, and that's exactly the advice that I took. And so now I've self-published 2 journals. I brought them. Is it okay if I show them off?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay, so this is the Devotion Workbook Journal, and it's 28 days of journaling prompts for self-love and self-devotion. And then I have been teaching people how to interpret and journal dreams for years, hundreds of people all over the world. And I finally put together my method in a fill in the blank dream journal. So this is one I've actually completely filled out myself. I actually practice what I preach with this. So that's Make the Dream Work, the 3-month fill in the blank dream journal that will change your life.
That's phenomenal, April. I've seen that on your social media, but I'm glad you brought that to show us a little bit more, because I've been curious. So that's amazing. Can you tell us more about your dream journaling? Do you coach this? How does this work? If we want our dreams interpreted and we're confused, how does this whole thing work?
So I think for a time, you could say that I coached it a little bit. I taught people how to do it. I taught people the journaling method that I use. It's like a really simple, easy way to dream journal very quick in the morning. And that way you can kind of take the data points of all of your dreams and look at them over the past week, over the past month, and even the 3 months of the journal itself, and look back and see what's really going on here, what's the patterns here. And yeah, I did offer workshops on this early in the pandemic, but as soon as people were going back into the office and going back into their daily lives, it just kind of those workshops kind of dried up a little bit, but I was still selling the dream journal method as a packaged workshop after that. It didn't do quite as well as the live workshops, but the book is doing great. So people love the books, and they're selling really well right now because they make great gifts, and we're just about to hit that gifting season. I think for some people, we're in the midst of holiday gifting season. Black Friday was this past Friday, so yeah.
So for anybody, let's wind back, because there might be some people watching this who didn't see the previous show, don't know anything about you whatsoever. So let's just fill in that gap of how will you describe yourself to anybody who hasn't seen what's the 50-word quick catch-up synopsis on April Kling Meyer for people who haven't seen the previous show?
Well, my mantra, my mission, and now I can honestly and officially say ministry, is creativity is spirituality. And my 100% focus goes into finding that sweet spot in the intersection of creativity and spirituality that helps people develop greater relationships with the divine within and build better relationships with the God of their understanding. And as an interfaith minister, it's truly the most interfaith endeavor there could be, because this is a ministry that can reach across any spiritual belief system, any faith base, any faith, any religion.
Yeah.
And actually, Orna Ross is somebody that you've had on the show, and she coined the term creativism and calls herself a creativist. So I got her permission to get ordained as a creativist minister when I got ordained as an interfaith minister. So creativism is basically living life under the principles of creativity, observing life through the lens of a creative. So that's what I'm all about. And I'm just really here to spread the message. And I see it growing all the time. I see it making really positive impacts on people in my life and people I don't even know at this point, which is great. So it's a life-giving energy that I have, my cup overfloweth. So that's what I do.
Creativity is so healing. And can you talk to us about the healing space that creativity brings, and maybe get a little personal about why that's so important to you?
Well, creativity is something that's been kind of co-opted in our society as something that can be, capitalized and bought and sold. And when we really endeavor to reclaim our creativity for ourselves and use it for ourselves, we start to learn really valuable lessons about how our creativity can give us individually a really excellent connection with who we are and ourselves, help us get to know ourselves better, and help us resolve difficult emotions. That's really the heart of the matter, is that we really don't know how to use creativity to solve our emotional problems anymore, because creativity has been used so much in capitalism to solve our financial situations. We use our creativity to make money and to pay our bills rather than to solve our own personal emotional issues. And when we go into the process of creative expression, there's so much available to us to truly unburden ourselves of difficult emotions and even trauma that's stored within the body. And I know, Christelle, you and I have talked about finger painting, like wild, crazy finger painting can be just the best way to release stored trauma and stored pain within the body, stored emotional pain that can result in physical pain. So these are things that I teach, and I most importantly teach to people to start with the audience of one, and the audience of one being the self. And you're not making anything for anybody to see or enjoy or even like approve. You're just making it for you. You're just making it for yourself to get that creative expression out. And a lot of this is a lot easier to instruct. It's like a lot easier to understand when you're doing it rather than when you're talking about it. But I'm doing my best.
Well, and I think sometimes, and you can expand upon this, April, it might come as a surprise to people when they agree to engage in the creative process. The release that comes, and maybe the release that comes when you don't have words. I know we've talked about this, and I'd love for you to explain that more. What happens when we don't have words for pain or feelings or even joy? I mean, it doesn't have to be trauma, any of that. What happens when we release that to create creativity?
Well, we have the opportunity and creativity to associate these emotions with something besides words, like color and sound. And not all of us think the same way. Some of us think in colors, some of us think in words, some of us think in sounds and music. And when we're able to use all of those different parts of our brain that we use to create, we're able to make different associations with the emotions that we're having based on what we're expressing. I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
I'm going to I had one question, but I'm going to ask a different one because one came up to me. When you're now ordained as an interfaith minister,
Yeah.
How do you get ordained? Because normally you'd expect, well, at least I respect in my naive things, that you have some church and then they ordain you in that church. But it sounds like you're ordained generally in the whole kind of world of religion, so to speak, and you almost not so much made up, but you've identified this creative church thing that you believe in. How did that process work? How did you become ordained? Like who ordained you as a reverend in the creative church, so to speak? How did that work?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking it.
Yeah.
I attended seminary with One Spirit Interfaith Foundation there in the UK.
Okay.
And they serve both Ireland and the UK. And I mean, people from all over Europe and even America are able to attend this seminary. It's a 2-year training. And it covers the full breadth of the major world religions, as well as modern faith paths and ancient faith paths. We're also taken through a practicum of spiritual counseling, which, as you see under my name here, it's a spiritual counselor. I have a certification. Actually, I'll just tilt my screen up. That is my certificate for being an ordained interfaith minister and spiritual counselor. So we go through a practicum of counseling as well for those 2 years, and learning things about so after 2 years, essentially, we spend all of that time learning. We spend all of that time. Oh, ceremonies. That's what I started to think of. We learn how to write ceremonies as well, because part of what I offer is doing ceremonies such as rites of passage, weddings, funerals, all the things that an ordained minister would do. And One Spirit has been in existence for a number of decades to ordain ministers for this purpose, because we're seeing this emergence of people who feel very spiritual and have a very rich and developed relationship with the God of their understanding, but they don't necessarily feel like they belong to any particular religion. And sometimes there's people such as myself that grew up in a religion that I no longer feel like I could be a part of, because I have such, different, I've become so different from what I was raised as. And really feel like that reaches so many different people in so many different situations. But as for me and my own upbringing and my own spiritual needs, I kind of became an interfaith minister because I would have liked to have had access to one myself. I became the thing that I needed.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And I remember tidbits of the rigorous process you went through. It's not easy. You're thoroughly engaged in the practice and the material. I personally, for selfish reasons, want to hear more about this. We've talked behind the scenes about the process that you went through. Can you tell us more? You had a cohort, you made friends from around the world, literally, and now you can marry people, you can do ceremonies. I want to hear you expand even more.
Well, yeah, we had a study group, and my study group was comprised of myself and another American, somebody else that lives in Ireland, and then someone else that lives in Sweden. And then there was one of my classmates in Germany. So we really are all over the place. And each Wednesday we would come to class. It would be a 3-hour class every Wednesday. And we would learn, we would have lecturers. We would talk about the material that we were reading, because we had a really huge, like this thick textbook that we studied from. And we were also encouraged to come up with our own independent study. Each year we had to come up with a project that would be something that we chose individually to study. And my first year was Helma af Klint. And my second year was really just about trying to get some ancestral healing done in Ireland, which is not where my ancestors are from, but that's where I live. So I decided to I wrote a paper about that journey for me and how I ended up doing like a hiking half marathon in the mountains here where I live in order to integrate myself with the land here and take my ancestors and my blood and my bones on that journey with me. It was really powerful. And I ended up painting this huge painting that is the grand finale, and that's hanging up in a local restaurant, actually.
Do you find healing space in nature? Is that part of your creative process?
Absolutely. Absolutely. To me, spirituality is the practice of observation. And I feel like nature thrives in our observation. Like, we thrive from observing nature. Nature also thrives from being observed. And when we are out there and we're watching when I'm out there and I'm watching the different flowers come up with the different seasons, anytime that I know when the foxgloves are going to come out or the daffodils are going to bloom, there's a certain energy that comes with that. And I've also been introduced to the Celtic wheel since living here, and also through one of my seminary tutors introduced me to the Celtic wheel, which has its own, each of the 8 seasons has its own energy that we can internalize and make very personal. And for instance, right now, that journey would be about longing and navigating our own darkness as we approach the winter solstice. So sounds kind of pagan, but again, I'm interfaith. So these are all the things that we can combine together and observe as much or as little as we like from across different cultures and across different belief systems.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask the question I was going to ask before, which is a bit totally nothing to do with what you were just talking about in the first tradition leading thing. But what would you say is the enemy of creativity? What are the biggest things in modern life that stop people from being creative? I mean, you've obviously talked a bit about how people use creativity to try and make money. And that you can argue whether that's good or not. But what are the biggest enemies what are the biggest enemies for creativity in general, however you use it? What's stopping people from releasing their creative potential?
Right. And again, I want to make a point to say that there's nothing wrong with making money from creativity.
Yeah.
It's just that if that's all your creativity is, it's not serving you, it's serving everyone but you. So I would say, bringing me to my point, I think that the enemy would be a lack of self-worth. Not really fully understanding how precious and beloved and important that you are, and that your voice and that your expression is actually quite beautiful, rare, and important. And if we go around the world and go throughout our lives, our day-to-day lives, believing that we have no worth as a self, then that we are our own worst enemies. That would be the enemy to me. And that's actually, I wrote Devotion, the self-love journal workbook. That's why I did that, because it really is the most important first step in really understanding how important and precious your own creativity is believing that you are beloved and worthy of devoting something to yourself. Yeah. It's a great question.
I saw a conversation somewhere, and I don't remember where you referred to yourself not as a coach, but as a counselor or a guide. I don't remember exactly how you worded it. And I thought, we need to hear this. I want to hear more about this because it's really powerful.
It's down there, spiritual counselor.
Spiritual counselor,
Yeah.
Yes.
I've been a coach.
There's a conversation somewhere. And I want to hear you expand upon it because it's so important and powerful as to the why.
I'm married to a coach. Like, I'm married to, and I've been a coach. I've been like a creativity coach years ago. Not that many years ago, like just a handful of years ago. I find that the difference is this. Coaches kind of have a little bit more freedom to offer like advice and strategy. I don't do that. I don't have any answers. And I know that in that conversation that you're referencing, I believe somebody came back and said, whoa, if you don't have any answers, why would I work with you? The answer to that is that you have the answers. I'm merely there to guide you inward and to help you create that sacred, safe space to find those answers within. A coach does that too, but a coach has a little bit more freedom to be a little bit more like, now what you need to do is this, and then you need to try this, and kind of give more homework and things like that. I don't really do that anymore. And my husband, who's is an athletic coach, all he does is tell people what to do. Mm-hmm. So to me, coach means it's like kind of more of an association with like having the answers and telling people how to do it and what to do. I don't do that. I'm really just about creating the space for you to find those answers within and to express them and to make them matter, make the meaning come home for you.
So you've got a book about dream diaries, and it's a dream diary, presumably writing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But how do you think dreams manifest themselves in terms of, are dreams a window into the subconscious? Do you think dreams are some kind of spiritual thing that's coming from outside and they're sending us messages? What are dreams? What significance should we give to them? Is it something internal that's coming out, or is it something external coming in, or is it a mix? Or what are dreams and why are they so important?
It is a mix. I really do believe it is. Our dreams, I mean, we have the opportunity as we go about our day to experience a communication with our bodies, for instance. Like if we're hungry, our body tells us we're hungry. Or if we're not feeling well, our body gives us a fever. When it comes to our subconscious, which is just as important as our bodies, in my opinion, the only chance our subconscious has to communicate with us is through dreams. And so the subconscious is a mix, like you said, of internal and external things. The subconscious is a supercomputer. It's a supercomputer of everything your senses have ever detected in your entire existence. But it's also a conduit into a collective intelligence, a collective consciousness that we don't necessarily have the ability with the way that our brains are right now, or not me anyway. Maybe some people do, but the ability to connect into that collective consciousness. I truly believe that if we individually and as a collective society start putting greater importance in dreams, we'll start seeing a little bit more about what we are all kind of thinking, what we're all kind of, the direction we're all kind of headed in. And I know that's a bit esoteric, but when it comes to the individual, I mean, the thing I really want people to focus on is just their own individual relationship with their own subconscious and their own dreams through dream journaling. And that is really just through observation, like I mentioned before, just making a conscious effort to record and review everything that occurs in dreams, because there's some really interesting things that come up. There's some really interesting concepts and some people, like I'll speak for myself. When I started dream journaling, there were people that emerged in my dream process repeatedly that I don't think I would have noticed that I was dreaming about them constantly if I wasn't writing it down. And I realized that there was some unresolved pain. There was some unresolved, conflicts that were still tripping me up in life. And I feel like that's really the main sign that we get in life that we don't have a really good relationship with our subconscious, when we feel like we're moving in a certain direction, but we're constantly thwarted from achieving our goals or getting wherever it is we want to be going. Sometimes it feels like we just can't seem to get ahead, or sometimes it feels like we're constantly tripping ourselves. And I really feel that is the biggest signal to dial in to the subconscious. Now, my best friend in the whole wide world is a hypnotherapist that lives in Hawaii. And he believes in dream journaling, but he also obviously believes in hypnosis. So that's yet another way to integrate with the subconscious. It doesn't really matter how you do it. It's just important that you do it. And that dream work is that, you have to pay someone to do hypnotherapy. Dream work is, aside from buying my book, dream work is basically free. It's inexpensive and it's really effective. Really effective.
Before we get to the very last question, I want to ask you, April, this, because I love your spirit and your joy and your healing presence. What is it that sets your soul on fire and makes you, Reverend April Kling Meyer, come alive?
Ooh, so many things. I love performing. I haven't done it in a really long time, but I used to be I used to be a vocalist in a cabaret performance act in Seattle, Washington for years. And I was in a band, and it was just a great moment. And recently I had the opportunity to do a sort of a mini performance for some friends. And also I performed at my ordination. That was interesting too. So I wrote a song and performed it at our ordination ceremony. And I love performing. I really do.
So did you write the song and sing it? Is that how that?
Yes. I wrote it with David Moss is a folk artist in England.
Oh, wow.
And he was a classmate in my seminary class, and he wrote this beautiful, beautiful melody on his I want to say lute, but I know it's not a lute. Is this like one of the tiny little string instruments, and he wrote this and he recorded it and sent it over to one of my classmates who asked me to help her write some lyrics. And I was like, yeah, I got this. I wrote the lyrics for the song and wrote this, like the singing part of the song. And then we performed it at ordination. It was really, really, really cool.
Wow.
It was the first time I performed on stage in a very long time, but it's like kind of awoken that desire in me to do that again. I love to sing on stage and I love to perform.
Oh, wow. That's very cool. Tim, are you going to close us out, or would you like me to?
Well, we usually have a standard question at the end. I could ask you a different question, but I won't. How can people find out about you, and how can people work with you if they want to? What sort of things do you help people with? Or what kind of things do you like helping people with? Let's say that. So.
Well, I do one-on-one and group work. So if you want to work with me, I'll make it very easy for you. creativityisspirituality.com. You'll have the opportunity to send me a message if you have an idea of a group workshop you'd like to put together, or if you just want to book some time to talk. I offer the free initial consultation, a free initial session for 30 minutes. You can book that on the website, creativityisspirituality.com, and schedule that time for the two of us just to talk and get to know each other and decide if that's something you want to do, work one-on-one with me. And then, of course, there's the books. But I have the podcast as well. That's on Anchor and Spotify, the Creativity is Spirituality podcast. And there's quite a few episodes that are coming out. They're all kind of stacking up in my hard drive right now. I need to get them edited and released. It's that time of year. It's just that time of year. But those are all the different ways you can stay engaged with my work. And then, of course, you can find me on social media. I'm on pretty much all of them except Twitter now.
It's funny. I think it's the only one I put down in your contact details on the web link. But after I had all the other ones, it's
wonderful. April, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad we got this chance to chat and hear more about what you're doing now and the healing space and creativity that you're offering the entire world, really. So thank you.
Yeah,
thank you so much. Really pleased to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, and thanks to anybody who's watched live or watches the replay or somehow sees it on the TV walking past along the street. Anybody who sees this, thanks so much for watching, and we'll talk. I think it's Marie Lurch next week, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So see everybody next week at the new time. This is the new time, so that's probably why we haven't had as many people watching as previously. But thanks everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye.
This is what God requires.